call the Policy Committee of the Whole agenda meeting to order. I'd ask Ms. Cindy to do roll call at this time.
Ms. Richards? Mr. Toller?
Here.
Ms. Abrams?
Here.
Mr. Westmoreland?
Present.
Mr. Duncan?
Here.
Mr. Bush?
Here.
Mr. Moore?
Here.
Ms. Simmons? Ms. Simmons?
Here.
Ms. Dominguez?
Present.
One A, consider approval to adopt policy GAAC, individuals with disabilities. Good afternoon, Mr. Jinko.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Stilly, board members. Hope everyone is doing fine today. Policy GAAC, it's a new policy that addresses the non-discrimination of individuals with disabilities and the school system's responsibility to provide federally mandated provisions regarding reasonable accommodations for persons with disabilities. This has been sent to us from forethought and reviewed by our council, and we bring it to you for adoption.
Do I hear a motion to adopt?
I make a motion.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Abrams, second by Mr. Toller. Do we have any discussion? Call for a vote.
Voting is open.
I'm not logged in yet, so yes for Tom.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Bush, okay.
Mine didn't come up. Yes.
Mr. Westmoreland?
Mine did.
Yours went up?
Mr. Duncan?
I voted.
It doesn't show it. I'm sorry.
My vote is yes. It's not showing?
I'll vote. You want me to vote yes?
Yeah.
Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
1B, consider approval to adopt policy GAG, staff conflicts of interest. Mr. Jinko?
Thank you, sir. It's a proposed policy that addresses situations arising from an individual's employment relationship and possible interests outside of the school board environment where conflict may arise. Again, proposed by forethought and reviewed by our council, and we bring to you for approval.
Do I hear a motion to adopt?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Ms. Simmons,
A second.
second by Mr. Jerry. Do we have any discussion on this motion?
I have a question.
Mr. Duncan?
Mr. Jinko, this one, on this policy and on the one that involves nepotism, I thought we already had some policies that dealt with that. And am I just not?
No, sir, I think what forethought is doing is taking where we had a policy in the past and it may have addressed 2 to 3 different issues. They're pulling them out and bringing one issue for staff conflict, one issue related to nepotism, instead of putting one policy with 2 or 3 different directions on there.
So are we gonna, I guess, later go back and remove those?
Yes, sir.
Those other
We'll
ones?
recode that one and X out the part that's related to staff interest
Okay.
or nepotism.
Okay.
Any other questions? Call for a vote.
Voting is open. Something must be wrong with your connection, Mr. Duncan.
I'm gonna log out and log back in.
Do you want
But
to
vote yes.
Okay. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
1C, consider approval to adopt policy GAHB, political activities. Mr. Jinko?
Thank you, sir. The policy includes information that limits activities of school personnel while on duty or during business hours. but is not intended to interfere with personal time or affairs away from the offices or school facilities in any way related to that individual's political views and so forth. Again, has been sent to us by forethought and reviewed by council, so we send to you for approval.
There a motion to adopt?
I make a motion to adopt.
Motion by Mr. Mingus.
Second.
Second by Ms. Simmons. We have any discussion?
I have a question.
Question
ahead.
by Mr. Toller?
Yeah, I was just reading in paragraph 1, this would put us in conflict with our current practice of allowing candidates to give flyers out at football games,
As long as they're not on the school grounds.
Right.
If you can be on a public road.
but that's the problem. You have schools like Sumner, for instance, where the football field is a quarter of a mile off the highway. It's typical that, our policies, I shouldn't say policy, our practice has always been, as long as they stand outside the gate and give literature, not just for us, but for other candidates as well. It's a good way to engage the public on the way to a game, because they have a way to get around it if they don't want to engage, and we're not intruding on their game time once they get in. But this would this would be at odds with that.
That would be the same way with Ponchatoula as well. You would have to stand at their gate on the grounds.
I don't know that we ever had a true policy about that. I think that was just a
Yeah, there's a policy.
accepted thing.
There's a policy regarding it, and in the policy, it says, our current policy says on school property. It's not allowed on school property. But we also sell ads
Yeah.
to be broadcasted. And of course, we follow the ad by saying, this is not a public statement based on, but anyway, Mr.
Is
Jinko.
it the statement, any property of the school board or any property located on premises owned or leased by the school board should not be used for the purpose of promoting any candidate or political party?
No, it's the second sentence of paragraph 1, I believe, says the school board directs that no cards, flyers,
Pamphlets,
may
brochures,
be
signs.
distributed upon school property at any time.
Yeah.
So that is going to prohibit.
If the board wishes to strike that one sentence.
You have to strike the last sentence also, like you said, because you talk about, any property of the school board shall not be used for the purpose of promoting any candidate or political party. The board just needs to make a decision.
But even if let's say even if they all have the opportunity to come there, if I show up, would I still be given, would that seem to me as being favored because I showed up and the other candidates did not?
I don't think that's a problem. I think the board just needs to make a decision, and if they want to even enforce it or not, because that's right, it's been in the policy before. If they're out, like, for example, Rolando, if they're outside the gate and on the road, then it's not on school property, I guess. That's the issue.
What about making a motion to table this so the administration can go back and look at it? Because I know it came from forethought, but maybe we need to give it a little bit of consideration as far as what's our practices now, and if that's what if the administration comes back and says we don't want it at all, then we'll have to straight up vote on the policy as written by the administration.
But you do have, you do have an enforcement policy, I guess.
So I'll make the motion that we table it.
You going to move?
Hold on, let me point out one other thing before we do.
Okay, go ahead.
And you
Sorry.
withdraw. That last sentence, the other issue with that, it would be, I know, on our football and baseball teams, there's all that signage that's sold. The sheriff typically purchases a sign at $500 a pop, the parish president, there's multiple political office holders, including myself, that purchase a lot of those signs. That would be another thing that we would need to address in any sort of revised policy, because that would take a lot of money from our boosters.
So we have a motion to table by Mr.
Mr.
Toller.
Chairman, I'd like to
We need
add
to-
something also in this conversation. Ms. Duncan said, I noticed that during our Christmas parade, there are political people who are pulling some of our student groups on trailers. Even in our parade in February, the Parade of Champions, we had a political candidate with a float. It had our school students on the float, but had his name all on the side of the float in that parade. So I think we ought to also talk about that some in these parades. Just because you're loaning our schools a float or you're loaning a truck and you're carrying a group of our key club, band, football team or whatever, does that give you permission to drape your political signs all on the side of it when you're in one of our parades? And the Parade of Champions really irked me a lot because
Well,
it was there for the children. And even though the person donated the money, the float, the lumber, the throws, but that's not what some of this is for. So I don't know if that's something we can talk about too.
When the board does consider this, you need to think about all those things, because you really want to,
Ron,
you really want to
Ron.
look at what he's talking about, you might not want to. She's
speaking to the
Sorry. I'm not even-
You want this one?
I'm just
Let her
saying,
say.
when you think about this, and y'all need to consider it, what he just said, you may not want to prohibit those kind of things, because you may want political candidates or sitting politicians to be able to donate, like, for example, I know the sheriff has a big barbecue thing,
Yeah.
and it has a sign on it, you can't take that sign off, but he might donate that to Sumner to cook hamburgers. Do you want to prohibit that? So think about all that when you're considering it.
Mr. Mingus?
Yeah, well, back to what Randy was saying, we have had that. I know when we had Kentwood had the state championship, we borrowed the sheriff's vehicle, and they brought the champions, and it said sheriff on it, and that's what I was gonna say. They do, if they lend us their items, they do have their name on them, because of course, they want recognition that they're supporting the education in their school system.
Okay, I'm looking for
I think there's
Go
a
ahead.
difference between a political figure and a candidate running for office. A political figure is supporting our school system, that they're already in office.
But then you're going to be essentially choosing
everybody.
an incumbent over anybody that tries to run against them.
No, that's what I'm saying, though. Not during an election is what I'm trying to say. I don't think we need to worry about that if it's not an election time. You know, we should be able to give our political figures here in the parish that opportunity to support our school system. It's only during an election that we need to worry about this situation.
But if they're,
Was it-
if they're running and they're an incumbent,
Right.
they are an elected person.
And would it make a difference whether there's an ongoing campaign? Because, I mean, anytime that you post something that recognizes you in a position that's already established, it's still advertising. It's keeping your name, in the minds of the people so that they'll remember you when the election comes. So it's still a form of campaigning.
I think the way that we could possibly solve it is just to require a disclaimer or a note on any signage that says that this is purchased advertising and not an endorsement by the school system or something along those lines.
And I do think the intent, the first part of this, the intent is well received, that we don't want employees during the workday politicizing their job.
Yeah, the first-
That's why
first
I make the
paragraph.
motion to table it, so we can go back and revisit this, because there's some good things in here. We just need to make sure that we get the product that we really,
I'm going to second
Wanna put
that
it in
motion,
policy.
please.
Second by Mr. Mingus. Is any discussion on tabling this proposal?
Not tabling, but I do have one other question that wasn't pertaining to actually politicking. Teachers, does this mean a teacher can have a political sign in their yard at home?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can't wear the political shirt to school during school hours.
Right.
Okay, gotcha.
Call for a vote on the motion to table.
Okay, just one second. I had to refresh. Motion is open. Voting is open?
and motion.
It says consider approval to adopt.
No, I had to refresh, so you probably need to refresh your,
Okay, well, mine didn't. It says consider
see on the
approval.
screen? On the screen, motion to table.
This is not,
It says motion to table.
it says motion to table.
Does it say that? Oh, at the bottom. Okay.
Up here it says to approve, but down here it says motion to table it.
But Brad, if you table it, it goes away forever.
Well, until they bring it back, yeah.
Mr. Moore? Oh, okay. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, moving on to 1D, consider approval to adopt policy GAI solicitations.
Thank you, sir. This policy limits employees from accepting certain solicitations and from endorsing, recommending, or selling products in which they may have a financial interest in that particular product. Again, information was sent to us from Forethought and has been reviewed by council, so we bring it to you for approval.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to adopt this policy?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Toller,
Second.
second by Mr. Duncan. We have any discussion on this policy? Go ahead, Mr. Toller.
One question on vendor contracts. It's common practice in our schools, like where Coke may have the contract to provide vending machines and sell drinks at the school, and then signage. Any type of monopoly agreement like that that we negotiate with that vendor, is that outside of this policy?
I would say yes, sir.
Say again?
It's not a personal gain for the employee or the principal or whoever's making that, it's a gain for the school system.
So it would be,
It would be used
They
for,
get a signage for their football stadium.
they would use it for whatever they felt is appropriate at the school.
they can't personally benefit from Coke from it.
Right. Just wanted to clarify.
Any other questions or
So
comments?
is this saying like, let's say for instance, a teacher sells Cincy products or Tupperware, whatever, they can't come into the school and sell amongst their peers or to students' parents or anything like that? Is that what this means?
They couldn't do is have a fundraiser of selling
For
their
Cincy.
Tupperware products where they're there to get the commission, they couldn't do that.
If I made masks, I couldn't go to the principals and say, hey, sell these masks as a fundraiser, you get X percent.
Okay, gotcha.
But it also, and I guess, like on the part that says sales, I would assume that that covers teachers trying to sell candy directly to their students for their own personal benefit, which I know has been an issue.
Yeah.
Do you think we need to have something more explicit that just makes that clear that, I mean, this one says employees shall be prohibited from using their positions with the school board for the purpose of attempting to sell products or services. I mean, is this, I don't know if this is the right policy to address that specific issue of teachers attempting to sell candy directly to their students, or,
And I agree with you, I don't think that is the place for,
because this has to do with the school system purchasing
yes, sir.
things, okay.
Question.
Go ahead, Ms. Simmons.
So, and I guess we've covered it, but say if a teacher on the side sells Avon or something like that, and she, at recess time, can she go to the teacher, another teacher, and say, I brought you Avon to school today, and collect the money?
I don't think that's an issue. The issue would be if that teacher tried to do a complete fundraiser for, let's say, XYZ Elementary.
But she can pass on a product that
That's
she
where,
had already,
if I call you after hours and say, hey, I'd like what's on page 4, I want to order number 1, 3, and 5, and then you bring it to me at school, I don't foresee that being an issue with this.
Yeah, we actually have had people that sell products, and they actually set up in the teacher's lounge, and
Doing
all
non-instructional
profits
time.
go to Relay for Life or whatever. So that would be prohibited as well.
Wouldn't be a personal gain.
No.
If
it
all
would be-
profits
that-
go
that
for
individual
something
would
else.
not profit from it. I wouldn't
The
profit from
employee
that.
wouldn't profit.
We're going to give it to an organization, but just make sure it's, non-instructional time, which I'm sure it is.
But Ron, if my wife had the world's finest chocolate franchise and I taught at Ponchatoula High School, what if I had the franchise and I taught at Ponchatoula High School? Could I go to Laranja and have a fundraiser at another school, but that was my business?
I would initially say no.
Okay.
No, sir.
Yeah, you're
I'm
employed.
glad I don't have it when I talk.
I wish you did.
Then you could bring us some chocolate.
Yeah, you could bring us some world's finest chocolate.
I call for question.
That's call for the
But the
question.
spouse is okay, right?
No.
Same as yourself.
Yeah.
This is like our ladies, man, 'cause they still.
Call for the vote.
Voting is open.
I'm refreshing mine, but it's a yes.
Mr. Toller. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
All right, we're going to pull E and F off of the agenda.
Yes, sir. We're asking you to pull E and F off.
All
There's
right.
some language in there that we did not like, and we'd like to get with council to clarify it a little bit. And
All right.
E and F? Is that what
E and
E
F,
and F.
yes, ma'am.
We'll go on to G, consider approval to adopt policy GAMFB, guidelines for handling body fluids in school.
So moved.
Mr.
Please explain this one.
Second.
I don't have a question.
Rico. You know? Anybody have a motion?
Yeah,
did.
Mr. Toller and Ms. Simmons has seconded it.
All right,
Yeah, we're ahead of it.
call for a vote.
Voting is open.
We'll discuss a lot of things, but bodily fluids? No debate.
Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
Moving on to H, consider approval to adopt policy GBDA, nepotism. Mr. Jinko.
Thank you, sir. This policy reinforces the provisions addressing assignments found in school board ethics policy, and is placed in the personnel section that emphasizes the employment limitations imposed by the nepotism statutes, and it's spelled out specifically on page 2 to assist. So again, it comes from forethought. We have reviewed it, council has reviewed it, and we send to you for adoption.
Do I hear a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Duncan, second by Ms. Simmons. Is there any discussion?
One clarification, on the immediate family, it doesn't list in-laws, like
No.
your sister-in-law, brother-in-law.
No,
But
sir.
according to the state, that is immediate family. In the ethics that we have to take every year, our brother's wife or our sister's husband,
Okay, I will.
I'm okay with it like this, but I just didn't know if our policy could be different than
Different
that,
from the state.
from what the ethics
It's
committee is
ethics.
telling us.
Can we amend it to add in the
This is
in-laws?
spouses of children, spouses of parents of spouses.
Brothers, sisters, unless it's just generically, regardless if it's in-law or not, it still could be considered sister.
Parents of spouse.
What's our justice of the peace say?
It's your call.
True politician.
What's our council say? Can we put in our in-laws into
It's
that?
in there, parents of the spouse.
But that's
Well,
Or that don't
in-laws.
include the brothers and sisters, or, I
Now,
mean,
does that
their
include
spouses.
in-laws, like in sister-in-law,
Oh, okay.
brother-in-law?
If we don't have to, let's not put it, but for those we don't want to make hiring any harder.
I think we should look and see if we actually have to do that. We don't want to.
Can you speak up?
Turn that
I think we
on.
should look at it, see if we absolutely have to put that in there. I don't know that we absolutely have to, there's a big definition here.
So it's the only one it wouldn't include is brother-in-law and sister-in-law, because we got,
Everybody else is covered.
yeah, because we got,
And I don't know, and so that's kind of a, for me, when I think about it, is that your actual immediate family? Because what if they then divorce? There's all those issues on, the ex-spouse and how do you monitor that? And I don't know, it just
If
seems
we-
a little tricky to me.
if we pass this as is, and we see, or we find that the state has it, it really doesn't change,
Actually,
it really doesn't change anything other than we'll have to either amend the
the way
policy.
it's written, actually,
Or
the
will
last spouse
supersede our policy.
cover- When I read it, I'm seeing spouses of
Oh,
children.
I'm looking at the statute.
Brothers, sisters,
See.
parents, spouse, and parents of spouse.
Immediate
I'm looking
family,
at, I'm looking at spouses being covered.
immediate family as in the statute is defined as
Brothers.
children, spouses of
Spouse.
his children, his
says-
brothers and
It says
sisters,
brothers,
and their spouses,
spouse.
his sisters and their spouses, his parents, his spouse, and the parents of his spouse. I mean, I would say we should adopt that definition as the definition for immediate family.
Well, then you just have to add brothers and spouses, sisters and spouses.
Okay.
And Brett, won't you make a motion to add that in after brothers, to add brother's spouse and sister's spouse?
My preference would be to use the exact definition that's in the statute.
Why don't you make a motion to amend it to add the exact definition that's in the statute?
So that, because it's, the statute defines immediate family, I'm just saying our definition, yes, should be, yes, so,
Mirror that.
yes, so my motion would be that we define immediate family as defined in revised statute 42:1102. And then you can put in that exact language, Ms. Jenkins.
Ron, I have a question. Not trying to change it, but it's underneath the definition, just real quick, it says, it has been expanded by the school board for purposes of assignment. Expanded. Do we have anybody that would be in violation while we expand this? Does that make sense? And are they grandfathered in? And I don't know if that's true or not.
There were 2 instances that were grandfathered in, but those instances are no longer working in the school system.
Okay, so we have no one is going to be affected by this right now.
Not that I'm aware of. no.
And if they are we going to grandfather them in just in case?
If they are, they would have been grandfathered in, so.
Okay.
I'm not aware of any immediate family members that are supervised by another immediate
Thank
family
you.
member.
Ms. Cindy, did you get the amendment?
Motion to amend to define immediate family as defined in revised statute 42-1102 under definitions. Is that okay, Mr. Duncan?
Yes, but I want to actually put that definition in the
I
policy.
will.
Okay.
In the motion?
No, in the policy.
In
when
the
we-
Okay.
policy.
Right, okay.
Do I hear a second?
Second?
Second by Mr. Toller. Any discussion?
Mr. Toler, okay.
Call for a vote on the amendment, to allow the amendment.
Voting is open. I have your name, Mr. Toler. I fixed it. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
Now, is there any further discussion on the policy as amended?
Call for vote.
Call for a vote.
And that was Mr. Duncan. Right?
Did mine come
I
up?
didn't get a, I
I
didn't
don't
get,
have a notification.
Mine didn't come up.
I think-
Mr. Westmoreland, who made the motion to approve the amendment?
The motion to approve the amendment, or to make the amendment, was Mr. Duncan, and then I seconded it.
Right.
And now we're back on the motion as amended, which I
Right.
made the motion, and
I'll second.
Yes.
Ms. Abram seconded.
Okay, all right.
I'm leaving this off. Tired of putting it on.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
Section I, consider approval to adopt policy GBRAA, violence in the workplace.
Thank you, sir. This is a new policy that's states the Tangipahoa Parish School System will not tolerate violence, threats, harassment, intimidation, and any other disruptive behavior by its employees to settle issues, disputes, or concerns that they may have. Again, was sent to us by Forethought, and we bring it to you for approval.
Hear a motion to adopt?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Simmons, second by Mr. Toller. Any discussion? Call for a vote.
Voting is open. Mr. Toller?
Yes. You did.
Okay. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
Section J, consider approval to adopt policy GBRAB, theft. Mr. Jinko.
Thank you, sir. Again, another policy that outlines that the Tangipahoa Parish School System will not tolerate the intentional misappropriating or taking anything by its employees, refusing to return anything that's owned by the school system, and discusses disciplinary action that will be taken up to termination of the individual should he or she take something from the school system.
Is there a motion to adopt?
I'll make a motion to adopt.
Motion by Ms. Dominguez. Here a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Abrams. Have any discussion? Call for a vote.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
Section K, consider approval to adopt policy GBRC, staff schedules. Mr. Jinko.
Thank you, sir. Again, policy outlines the various schedules that school system employees have, from the daily work schedules, when school begins, central office times that it'll be open, summer work schedule, and even has a provision related to someone coming back from a workers' comp claim related to a light-duty modified schedule. So again, has been sent to us by Forethought, and we send to you for approval.
Do I hear a motion to adopt?
So move.
Motion by Mr. Toller,
Second.
second by Ms. Simmons. Do we have any discussion? Call for a vote.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
Section M, consider approval to adopt policy GBRI, personal leave and absences. Mr. Jinko.
What about GBRG?
I'm sorry. Let's go back to L, huh? Consider approval to adopt policy GBRG, non-school employment. I'm getting ahead of
You're just
myself.
checking to see if I was paying attention.
Exactly.
Again, a policy that gives the guidelines for our employees if they choose to work outside jobs. Basically, says that their outside job cannot interfere with them doing their primary job of whatever it happens to be for us. Again, sent to us for Forethought, and we send to you for approval, please.
Do I hear a motion to adopt?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Ms. Simmons,
Second.
second by Ms. Dominguez. We have discussion?
Yes. Mr.
Yeah.
Jinko, how do you define that would raise a conflict of interest? First paragraph, last few words. Who defines that?
In this case, Forethought sent it to us, and my definition or my thought on that, if I was asked to rule on something, would be, let's say if I am a math teacher and I'm trying we're using XYZ math program, and I'm trying to sell ABC math program to whether it be another district or to another outside entity, to where that would be, to me, would be a conflict of interest of me working with the school system.
Even if it doesn't affect the curriculum here? I mean, you know, an outside sales job would just be that. How would that conflict, what I'm asking
Yes.
is, how would that conflict?
Well, would I do my job as well as I should do in the classroom if I'm trying to sell this other product and I'm competing with the product that I'm using in my classroom?
Okay, so we do have a process of measuring performance, right? Performance appraisals.
Yes, sir.
So if a teacher has an excellent performance appraisal,
Then that would not be a conflict.
I understand. So this is an objective policy that we're
But
making.
I don't know if it's subjective or objective, but I think that, you know, when you're presented with a real life instance, then it would be a little bit easier for me to give a judgment on if it's a violation of the policy or not.
So I have one that I think definitely needs to be precisely addressed in this policy, which is, and it's somewhat, I think, a fairly common practice, which is having teachers receive compensation for privately tutoring their existing students, which I think is a direct conflict of interest and a direct ethics violation for being privately compensated for the same job that you're supposed to be doing as a public person. This policy doesn't specifically prohibit that.
It just talks about that last sentence about during school hours.
Yeah, it just says during school hours, so you could still privately tutor for compensation your own students if you were doing it outside of school hours, but I think would be a violation of the state ethics code, but I don't know that the rest of the board may not agree, and maybe it's something we should have another lawyer weigh in on specifically before we add it to this policy, but I see it creating a significant problem.
You cannot tutor
got a
your own
question?
students.
I can't hear you.
You can't tutor your own students, except during school for no compensation. I'm not on.
Move it closer to her, Ron.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you can't,
Is that somewhere in a policy?
what this policy says is you can't engage in private instruction of students for compensation during school hours, which we know that for sure. But I think Brad's right that you can't tutor your own students after school for pay. But so for example, if you're a math teacher at Hammond High, and this student was your student last year, but he's not your student this year, you can tutor them. But you couldn't have tutored them last year when they were your actual student, except during school hours for no compensation.
Well, also, that comes to question, I've heard that some of our principals have had to basically reprimand, I would say, their teachers for doing that, and also wanting to do it in their classroom after school on our campus. So I would think that would need to be in there as well, that it does say something about the facilities there, but not stay after school and get paid and tutor somebody, even a kid that's not in your classroom.
So Ashley, when you say
Well,
we
wait,
we
I'm
can't,
sorry.
where do you get that from? We can't. That's a
I
policy?
think that's an ethics violation.
It's like, where's that written
Like
down there?
Department of Education.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I missed the
She
last
didn't
part of
understand
it.
that.
What I'm saying is, in other words, a teacher may stay after school instead of going home and the kid going to their house. The student will stay after and go into another teacher's classroom that's not their teacher, but another teacher at the school, and be tutored for money as they're still on our campus. So that was, someone had, I guess, turned someone in for doing that, and of course the principal stopped it, because if you're going to tutor, you have to tutor in your own time, not on campus, even if it's after school hours, in our classrooms. So, I mean, I don't know if that's a rule or if that needs to be a rule.
Wouldn't the second section cover that? You're not going to use school board facilities to perform outside work without the consent of the superintendent?
During school hours.
Mr. Duncan, is that some language you'd like to add to the,
Any time.
like no teacher shall privately tutor any existing students?
Where's that?
Right here.
Yeah, I think I think it would actually be a separate sentence.
Yes, sir.
So after that last sentence, we would do an additional sentence that says, no teacher shall engage in private instruction of their current students for compensation, period.
During school hours or not during school hours?
Compensation.
So you'd delete during school hours.
Well, I mean, I'm just,
No,
well, the
that's
one is,
different.
Let's add a second sentence, keep that sentence.
Okay.
the sentence that there is correct, but then you would also have a specific prohibition of engaging in private instruction of their current teacher for compensation at any time during, I don't know how else you would say it.
While they are that teacher student, but we'll have to say.
Right, a current student, yeah.
Mr. Westmoreland?
Yes.
Just to clear that up too, so that the public doesn't think that we're spending our time trying to figure up a way to punish teachers or to stop teachers from making extra money, or we're trying to stop education or learning. The intent of that policy is to protect the child so that the teacher is doing their job in the classroom, not holding back so that they can earn more money later. So we don't want that to go out that we're trying to find a new way to punish our teachers. This is a protection for the children.
Well, and it's also a protection for the teachers, because the statute that addresses this is kind of vague. It just vaguely talks about a public servant receiving extra compensation for the same job that they already are being paid by the public to do. So that's what the statute currently says. Well, in my mind, that clearly covers a teacher receiving extra compensation to tutor one of their existing students, because you're getting extra money to do the same job that we're paying you. But by adding it specifically in this policy, hopefully we can, maybe a teacher that didn't know that that was a violation can now clearly see that that is a violation of the ethics code, and you can get in trouble for that.
So there's a current amendment?
Repeat his motion.
Just one question. So, are we currently under a system, are we operating on a policy that allows the teacher to be paid, to be compensated by the school system for tutoring?
No, I think our
So
current
any-
policy is just quiet or silent on whether a receiving extra money to tutor your own student is a problem or
I
not.
mean, because we're going to have, regardless, we're going to have some students, no matter how good the teacher is, or how well she instructs the class, during the regular class period time, that child is still going to need some tutoring.
And
I mean,
that
every
teacher-
child isn't learning the
That
same.
teacher can tutor without compensation.
Yeah, I understood that. I understood that. My question is, does our current policy allow for the teacher to be paid, compensated overtime for helping a student who needs extra help?
No. No, we can't pay overtime. No, but what that student can do is go to another teacher and pay that teacher to provide that extra tutoring service.
Get
So the
accommodation.
child can get help.
They can get other help, but they just can't get it from their current math teacher, and that current math teacher be paid extra to do it.
All right.
All right, so the amendment, it should read, "No teacher shall engage in private instruction of current students for compensation."
Of one of their current students for compensation.
Okay. Of one of their current students. You got it, Miss Cindy, now?
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a second to that amendment?
Second.
Motion's been made and second. Any discussion on the amendment? Call for a vote.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
All right, now that we have the amended policy, is there any discussion on it?
Move to adopt as amended.
Motion been made to adopt it as amended. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Dominguez. Any discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Ron, I still got trouble with this conflict of interest statement. I mean, that is so broad and so wide. And are you gonna make that decision, or Ms. Stilley's gonna make that decision? Or are we gonna have to get involved? Because when you say conflict of interest, I understand what Mr. Duncan's saying about that part, and that was fine. I know we can't list everything, but, I mean, who decides the conflict of interest? Because in theory, I mean, I know each individual, can we reword that somehow? Or each individual case is different, or somebody will take the superintendent and her staff will look and discuss each individual situation as it arises, or maybe not. I mean, I don't know if anybody else feels anything different, but, you know, you get a principal, or you or me, and we might all disagree on what's the conflict of interest. And I mean, I love my man, Dr. Hurst, but he's a school board member in St. Helena Parish. Is that a conflict of interest? And him being our assistant superintendent? I'd say no, but someone else might say, yeah, and I love him. But, so, you know, who decides that? Or a football coach who's doing a summer coaching clinic at another school and helping their kids get better. Is that a conflict of interest? And that's what he does for a living. I mean, in the summer, he does summer camps. So I just wish I knew who was going to make that decision. I guess what I'm trying to say.
Well, ultimately, I would make a decision to bring to Ms. Stilley, and she would say yes or no to my recommendation, and then it would go out that way.
And then they would go through the normal grievance.
Right, if there was a grievance procedure, it ultimately could end before the board if we could not solve it before it got here. So before we get to that point, there would be council calls to the lady right here to give us some guidance.
But, yeah, it would be a normal employee grievance procedures, I think, what would be anticipated by this.
So would it not be a good way to circumvent that problem by establishing some rules that you could use to just, you know, just do a checkoff list on whether or not it meets the criteria for acceptance or not?
Yes, I think we could come up with some pros and cons, and then develop a rubric with some assistance to say if it, you know, if it checks off 4 boxes, then it is or is not a conflict, or vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, because it would then give the person who is submitting the request a guideline to self-check themselves. You know, if they don't meet them, then it might just totally avoid the conflict in the first place.
You're not suggesting that we put that in the policy, though, but just that the personnel.
It doesn't have to go in this policy, right, as long as it's somewhere documented how
it's going to be.
Yeah, your checklist for, yes.
There's a conflict. If I'm in a good mood today, it'd be this way. If I'm in a bad mood, it'd be the other way. But if I have it written out, then I'm following that for checking off yes or no.
Pretty much.
I might have a way to address, Ron, don't we, I don't know how often we require this, but don't our teachers have to do like an online ethics course?
Once a year, yes, sir.
And do they address defining conflicts of interest in that online ethics course? Do you remember?
I don't recall. I don't think it does, Mr. Duncan. I know they talk about nepotism, and they talk about receiving funds for different things. I'm not exactly sure that a specific section related to a conflict of interest is in there.
'Cause I know that for ours, I mean, it seems like they spend
A lot of time on
way too much time on defining conflicts of interest. But
Maybe we could use that as a guide.
yeah, I mean that might be the way to help solve this, is to make it part of our professional development that we include some instruction on
some examples.
conflicts of interest or something like
Yes,
that.
sir.
Call for a vote
The motion as amended?
on the motion as
I
amended.
think what Mr. Duncan, from what I'm reading, Mr. Duncan just wanted to, we would accepted the policy with just adding that one sentence, not like as amended.
I thought we
It says
voted
motion to-
first to allow the amendment, right?
Right, yeah, we're just adding that
Now we got to vote for the
For the policy.
policy
Yeah,
as
amendment
amended.
policy, yeah.
with that extra sentence.
With-
I
You're right,
think
correct,
reading
as
it on here,
amended.
It looks like she said, you thought we already passed it. No? Okay.
Yeah, because it says we already passed.
Online voting is open. Oh, it's open now.
Oh, there it is.
There it is.
Voting is closed. Motion passes with Mr. Bush voting no. Excuse me.
Section M, consider approval to adopt policy GBRI, personal leaves and absences. Motion by Mr. Toller. Second by
Second.
Second by Mr. Duncan. Have any discussion on this? Call for a vote.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
Section N, consider approval to adopt policy GBRIG, public service. Mr. Jinko?
Yes, sir. This addresses employees that serve as elected public officials and election commissioners it talks about provisions related to them being our employees and an elected public official.
There a motion to adopt?
I make the motion to adopt.
Motion by Ms. Simmons. Here's second by Mr. Toller. Any discussion? Call for a vote.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
Section O, consider approval to adopt policy GBRIJ, leave without pay. Mr. Jinko?
Thank you, sir. It reviews the leave without pay policy and procedure and has an expanded section that refers to the right of the superintendent to reassign an employee to another equal position if they take a leave without pay. So again, sent to us for forethought, and we send to you for approval.
Is there a motion to adopt?
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Mr. Bush,
Second.
second by Ms. Simmons. We have any discussion?
Just a question.
Sure.
The policy makes mention of sabbaticals, and for some reason in my head, I thought we got rid of
We got rid of
sabbaticals.
sabbaticals, yes,
So we still don't have that right now?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay. That was it.
Any further discussion? Call for a vote.
I'm sorry, Mr. Westmoreland. Who made the motion?
Mr. Bush did,
Okay,
and
that's what I
Ms.
have.
Simmons second.
Okay. Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
Section P, consider approval to adopt policy GBRIK, miscellaneous leave. Mr. Jinko?
Yes, sir. This discusses provisions that employees can use to attend, observe, or participate in conferences or classroom activities related to their dependent children or that they have legal guardianship of. Again, it's sent to us by forethought, and we send to you for approval.
Hear a motion to adopt
So move.
by Mr. Duncan. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Bush. Any discussion?
Is this new?
It's a new policy, yes.
It is a new one by itself.
Okay.
And somewhere in one of our first sections of personnel, this is at the very bottom of another policy. So they've just taken it out and made its own
Has
policy.
it always been 16 hours?
I think it was 12 a
That's
few
what I
years
was,
ago.
that's what I was thinking.
Yes, sir.
It was less. Thank you.
So that'll be something we'll delete out later when
Yes,
we
sir.
get to that. Call for a vote.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
Moving on to revisions. 2A, consider approval of revisions to policy GBU ethics. Mr. Jinko.
Thank you, sir. They've renamed from Code of Ethics to Ethics, and it's being recoded. And there is one change or addition where they put school in front of board and to make it school board instead of just the board. So again, these come to us from forethought, and we ask for your approval.
Your motion to adopt the
I'll make the
revision?
motion to adopt.
Motion. Motion by Ms. Simmons, second by Mr. Toller. Any discussion? Call for a vote.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
2B, consider approval of the revisions to policy GAAA-P, section 504 grievance. Mr. Jinko.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, it's a name change where it goes from equal opportunity to section 504 grievance procedure, and has a minor name change from Tangipahoa Parish School System to Tangipahoa Parish School Board. And those are the only changes.
Do I hear a motion to adopt?
I make a motion.
Motion
Second.
by Ms. Abrams, second by Mr. Bush. Any discussion? Call for a vote.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
2C, consider approval to adopt policy GAD, professional development opportunities. Mr. Jinko.
Thank you, sir. Just some minor wording change on the last paragraph, changing from administrative director of administration and pupil services to the assistant superintendent over student services.
Do I hear a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Toller,
Second.
second by Ms. Dominguez. Do you have any discussion? Call for vote.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
2D, consider approval of the recoding of policy GBDB, employment of retired personnel. Mr. Jinko.
Thank you, sir. Changes are just recoding it, and the inclusion of the Louisiana Revised Statute on the last page that oversees this particular issue for our bus drivers.
Hear a motion to adopt the revision?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Ms. Simmons,
Second.
second by Ms. Dominguez. Do you have any discussion? Call for a vote.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
All right, that concludes the agenda for today, September
Mr.
1st.
Jenkins, what happened to our boy, Mr. Schnellbach? You got rid of him today and you took over the whole show or what? Huh?
I took one for the team. I worked out last time.
First
Meeting
thing
adjourned.
came in or what?